Alright, so this question asks, what are some of the things for me to take note if I'm a buyer and I'm about to put in an offer for the private property in the resale market that I intend to buy? Now, great question, and I think it's very important to actually remember some of the good practices before you actually put in an offer, you put in a check for resale property to a private property owner, because there are just some things that are clearly different when you're buying a new launch from the developer and from the resale market. Now, what are some of the good practices? Now, number one, before you actually put in an offer, it's very important to call your banker, because you want to ask your banker to do an indicative desktop valuation of that property that you intend to buy. Reason being, compared to a new launch, when you go to the developer, when the developer lists the price, I would say close to 100% of the time, the bank will actually match according to the list price that a developer is selling. Now, compared to the resale market, that's entirely different. Why? Because the valuation method from the bank for resale properties depends on several factors. For example, like the most recent transaction prices, the height of the unit, the renovations, the facing of the unit. So there are several factors that affect the valuation of the property. So it's very important that you call your banker. For example, before I offer for this unit, let's say unit number hex 10-01, I need to send the exact details to my banker from the bank that I intend to loan from, let's say bank ABC. I need to send to my banker from the bank and say that, okay, this is the address, hex 10-01, the square feet goes like this, roughly how's the condition of the property. The owner is asking for like 1.5 million, can you match it or not? If the banker comes back to me and say that, hey Melvin, we can match 1.5 million, then I can safely go ahead and negotiate an offer for the property. So in the event if I really do buy at 1.5 million, I'm very sure that I can loan, based on the latest cooling measures, I can loan 75% of that 1.5 million because my bank supports the valuation. Now, for example, if let's say the seller wants to sell the property at 1.5 million, but my banker say, hey Melvin, we can only match up to 1.4 million. So in the event if I still go ahead and buy at 1.5 million, the bank will actually only loan me 75% of 1.4, and 100,000 I actually have to top up in cash. So this is a very important step to check before you actually place a firm offer to the seller to start the negotiation process. Now, number two, you have to make sure that the terms of the offer is clear. Now, usually if an agent is representing you, they will actually have what we call an offer letter. Now, the offer letter usually is a one-page offer letter accompanied with a check to present to the seller agent, and the seller will actually come back to you to say that whether the offer is accepted or declined. Now, if the offer is accepted, the seller agent will actually draft out an OTP, and then you will collect the option, meaning that now you have the option and the deal is done. So in your one-page offer letter, it's very important because once the offer letter goes through and the seller accepts it, it's very hard to change the terms because all the changes in the terms will have to go through both seller and buyer lawyer, which is a little bit more tedious. So a few key things. Number one, make sure that you indicate clearly your option period. Option period can be, in the market practice, usually it's about 14 days. Completion period, whether 8 weeks, 10 weeks or 12 weeks, discuss that prior to you making a firm offer. Discuss with the seller or the seller's agent to see mutually what kind of completion weeks both parties are comfortable with. And probably you might want to indicate in the offer letter to ask for maybe a one-time inspection to actually bring your contractor or renovation ID to go out and take some measurement if you're in a rush to renovate your place straight away after completion. And also do indicate another inspection appointment for your bank's appointed valuer to go up to do the valuation inspection, because that is part of the bank's process. They will actually send in their valuer to do a valuation of the place as part of the process to disperse your loan in the event if you're taking a bank loan. And of course, indicate the buyer's names clearly in the offer letter and your price clearly in the offer letter as well, and indicate the option fee and the exercise fee clearly. And of course, to protect yourself as a buyer, do request to do up an inventory list of the property, fixed fittings and fixtures if there's any to be left behind, because that will be at least a more transparent approach so that you can be sure like the fixtures and fittings that you see during the viewing will be left for you. Alright, I hope that answers your question. I'm planning to sell my current property, restructure my plans a little, planning to buy 2 properties. One will be under my hubby's name and one under my name. Do you think it's safe to do that, or just to be safe and buy one property under both our names? We're currently both working, we have well-paid jobs, and after selling our place, we have both sets of down payment for 2 properties. So do you think that it's safe for us to go ahead and do so? Interesting question from somebody that is planning to sell their current property and then restructure their property portfolio, plans a little. Great question, and I think that everyone at a certain point in our life will definitely want to plan to buy another property for investment or for long-term rental play, whether is it to buy a second property in future just to rent out for the long term. If there's an opportunity after buying a second property to actually sell it once it appreciates and stuff like that. But I think there are actually a few key things that we usually look at before we decide whether it is safe to go ahead and have this plan. For us, what we like to term it as 1+1 plan. One property actually is for your own stay, the other one is for your rental play or upside investment. No, I think the first key thing is to plan and ensure that your finances is viable and allows you to do that. So internally, back in how we calculate for our clients is we use what we call our portfolio planning calculator. It looks very small here because there's just too many numbers here. So what we do is that we actually crunch in the numbers of the current property that our client have, and then we see that after the sale of this property, the numbers that comes out of it, the amount of CPF funds that is released, and then we pump in the numbers into the next portion here to plan in the event if, let's say, our client were to buy two properties, how does the number fare, and then how does it look like, whether it passed the stress test, is it too stressful for the client to undertake two properties, and also to work out what is essentially their plan. So importantly is, I think the numbers has to work out and it has to be comfortable for the family before they actually proceed for this thing. So importantly is work out your finances with your agent, whoever is representing you now. The second thing which we think is important is that the property for your own stay, we all have our preferences. I mean, some of us just grew up in certain estates and certain part, probably you grew up in the east or grew up in the west, and you just like to stay near that because your life is there. Your parents, your siblings are there, your kids' schools are there. So for own stay property, I think your comfort level of the area is of extreme importance because essentially you want to ensure that you like the place, you love the place, you love the area that you're staying at. The other property that is actually purchased for investment, I think that one is very important, that you have to look at certain factors because the emotional part of yourself staying there is out of the picture. So that investment property really have to work out well in terms of performance, so rentability performance and future growth performance. So most of the time, the number one thing that we look at is whether is there any potential of the property in the area for future growth, whether is there any master plan transformation happening over there, any upcoming in terms of amenities or transportation transformation. And we also want to look at the ease of rentability in that area in terms of the demand from tenants, because we want to ensure that if that property is to be rented out in the mid to long term, we want to ensure that the vacancy rate is kept low and that the take-up rate of tenancy is good so that we do not have to top up so much to service the mortgage in a sense. The next thing that we want to look at is also the supply competition in that area. How does the performance of that property that you intend to buy fare compared to the surrounding properties? And that's something that is very important, and usually we analyze that back end for our clients because all these factors will actually affect your ease of exit in the mid to long term. And you want to think, if let's say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road, just imagine that you are the future buyer, will you actually want to buy that property or not? So you got to think in terms of the future buyer's shoe, whether will that property remain attractive in future, because that will affect your ease of exit. Now, so these are just some of the key points, and we really can't go really in depth because usually we do this over a 1 to 2 hour coffee session with our clients to explain and to analyze for them in terms of our portfolio planning. And this is just a very brief of some of the key highlights, and we hope that it helps you. No, thank you.